Scientology produces prideful, selfish, evil people. That's what it does, and that's what we're going to talk about. And the reason why I want to talk about this today, I've been talking a lot about Scientology, and the reason for that is I truly believe it's the closest counterfeit religion, or belief system. I believe it's ticks the most boxes for what would be the easiest thing to ensnare humanity. And today I want to talk about pridefulness, the selfishness, and the evilness that it promotes in others. Now, if this is your first time watching me talk about this, I've made a lot of videos about Scientology. My Scientology playlist is probably going to be in the description box below. And I'm looking at it more from a perspective still of what they're actually teaching in the actual doctrines of Scientology, more so than I am what we see of people who've become a victim. And there is a reason for that, because I want to really delve into how people get into this, why it's attractive, if it even does what it says, and what is it actually doing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So one thing that I've picked up is that, as I've said before, Scientology in and of itself, L. Ron Hubbard says that he believes us humans are good with evil added. That already fundamentally is a great basis for pride. Now, let's address what we're going to talk about pride here, and we'll get to why this is evil eventually. I've done a whole video on pride. I've studied it. I did a whole long study of it from a philosophical approach, from a biblical approach, from a bunch of approaches. So you guys should check that video out because it's really good, if you ask me. But in this video, we're going to talk specifically about these characteristics of pride. First of all, one being putting what I want right now above anything and everyone else, right? Now, obviously, that's very much linked to entitlement, which is also a part of Scientology, which we'll get into. I'll give you the example that L. Ron Hubbard used. And I always use this example, guys. I know some of you are like, how many times are you going to say this? I like to, as I always say, I like to use what people have actually said specifically so that I can assess what they've said specifically, right? The same way you would hold me accountable for what I say, right? He said that as a Scientologist, we want you to, be able to stop you from I don't know, I'm giving him an American accent. This guy was actually, I think he was British. If I can't remember now, actually, I can't even remember, but I know that his house is in Bishop Stortford. By the way, the lady in New York City's Scientology was telling me that they have this big meet up there for all the top level Scientologists once a year, and they meet at his house in Bishop Stortford, which I thought was freaking insane. That I was discovering this because I saw a whole board of, when I went into the building in New York City, they had a board up, and it was they had all these names of it, and they were like, well, these are all the people who've contributed massively to Scientology, and everybody goes to meet there once a year. And I was like, crazy that I'm covered all the way to New York and I'm talking to the Scientology lady who's telling me that she's going somewhere that is easily accessible for me living in the UK to get to, which is just crazy. But anyway, putting what you want above what everybody what you want right now above everything else. So he uses the example of, if you're somebody that wants to hunt a duck, you as a person who kills the duck shouldn't be questioning whether you should or shouldn't kill the duck, because the only thing that would stop you is your reactive mind. Otherwise, kill the duck, because he says that he believes that once we remove our reactive mind, we on our own, whatever we want to do is what we should do anyway. We don't need to be told what to do. We just need to have our reactive mind removed, and then we will do the right thing. So if you want to kill a duck, kill the duck. The only thing is, from the duck's perspective, you might not be considered a good person. Seems like and I like that he uses that example. It's extremely intelligent, because that's one of those things that, as an average human being, as somebody who probably consumes, let's say, meat, or maybe even duck, you're already going to be like, oh, that's a fair comparison because, the food chain. But when we extrapolate that logic further and we start to think about what that means on a grander scale, as in on a day-to-day, the entitlement that I get to do what I want regardless of how you feel about it, all of a sudden, or regardless of what the result is, all of a sudden it causes issues. Because if you're in a relationship with somebody, let's say in a monogamous relationship, and they decide that they just want to be married with you, but they also want to be with whoever else they want to be with, According to Scientology, they can. But how will you feel about that? Let's go to an extreme. Let's talk about sexual predators. The entitlement. Hey, if they want to have you, nothing should stop them. The only thing that would be stopping them is their reactive mind. Do you see what I'm saying? And so the notes I've got written here about, is, self-indulgence is a manifestation of pride. Self-indulgence. And the reason why I'm talking about all of this, guys, is because I now see and understand that this Scientology thing is extremely attractive. It's extremely attractive because it addresses a lot of the issues that humans, all of us, face in life at some point in some type of way, which is feeling a lack of having things figured out, as it were, whether it be your figuring out your how you want to live your life, what type of life you want to have, what you should do with yourself, that type of thing. It also addresses your reactive mind, this idea that all the trauma and things that you've been through are limiting you from the best version of yourself. That is an observable truth that I think we can all see, because we see it in society, that the less trauma you've experienced in your life, more likely the less restricted you feel in doing things that you would like to do a lot of the time, or that you would want to do. Sometimes we see the complete reverse, obviously, as well, because trauma can also lead to a heightened sense of entitlement. So it's very attractive. We're going to help you get your life together, and you already are good with the evil added. So we're just going to remove the evil. That panders to the selfish, prideful nature of humans, of us, that we all like to think we're good. We all like to think we're these such good people who are just better than others and just, good. And I also find it interesting that he does what God doesn't do, which is he says that some people are just insane, in which case we shouldn't even bother in Scientology. And actually what I've realized with Scientology is the more you delve deep into it, the more pride is a significant part of it. Because as I said to you guys, even when it came down to all of this stuff like the tone scale in Scientology is where they rate whether you're basically judged on how you speak to people, which again is not necessarily a bad thing, because there are ways that we all in society look at, like, for example, if you're having a respectful conversation with somebody, you don't expect them to be shouting at you. They talk about stuff like this, but then they use these things as manipulation tactics. Instead, when you're talking to a person with this tone, if you use this tone, you will get this out of it. So essentially, we're eventually getting to a point where we are pridefully deciding that I get to control people. Because for me, think about witchcraft. Witchcraft is manipulation and control. And the reason why witchcraft itself is problematic and manipulation is because God gave us free will, and God doesn't manipulate. So he tells you information that you may want to take into account in how you choose to use your free will, right? And then he lets you do it. He doesn't control you. He doesn't sit there as a puppeteer. But not the kingdom of darkness. Because pridefully, the entitlement is that I get to do this because I want to. It doesn't matter how it affects you. This is exactly how psychopaths think. This is why I think that people are so quick, again, to look down at somebody who's a psychopath and be like, oh my gosh, psychopathic people just lack remorse altogether, which means the actions they do, they don't think about how they're affecting somebody else. It's not even it's not a barrier for them. They just do whatever they're doing. That's why for like is it psychopathic or narcissistic people now? There's those two things are very closely related with pride also. Those kinds of people, I can't remember which example it was, but there was like a clinical psychologist who was explaining that, I think it was with psychopaths. Either way, it's true of both psychopathic people and narcissistic people, from what I've heard of clinical specialists in both, that as a person, you're as good to those people. A human being could be as good to them as a car. If you're a psychopathic person, you don't look at people as people. You look at people as objects, as chess pieces. And so, again, everything is there to serve you. Self-indulgence, lack of caring about how these things affect other people. That is exactly what Scientology is telling you to do. there's nothing else there's like, I've gone through all the explanations of exactly what L. Ron Hubbard said. The more that I've spoken to people in Scientology itself, with this sense of like, we're like above people, and like, others who aren't into this, like, it's because they just have this reactive mind, and if they were smart they would stay. And it gets to the point where this is where it becomes a true snare, because at the end they get you. By the way, I'll just let you know why you don't want to get stuck in it. If you end up in Scientology and you end up getting, after you've already signed the billion-year contract and everything, if the things aren't working out for you in the long haul, you know what they're going to tell you? Oh, well, you must be doing something wrong. Oh my gosh, you've circled all the way back to the same issue you started with. I'm doing something wrong. I have this trauma. I have this, that, and the other. Isn't that interesting? I think that it is very interesting. And why does it do that? Because ultimately, L. Ron Hubbard himself is a prideful, selfish person. A prideful, selfish, evil person. How can I, think about how much power this man was so good at what he did, that this monster that he created has more than successfully mutated long after he died. And while he was here, he was enjoying the worship of people. He bragged a lot about how he talks to all the different religions, including Scientology. How doctors in hospitals have told them that they use Scientology in their practice. Scientology is having its way in the entertainment industry in so many different types of ways. Scientology, in fact, I've had people even tell me, even on YouTube, on my small little YouTube channel here, I was considering Scientology. And for no fault of your own, it's extremely attractive. It's very attractive from how they present it. But the truth of what they're doing is what's truly sinister. They present it as, we just want to help you. And like I've said, Scientology shapeshifts. If you're a scientific person, this is why they evaluate you. Something, it's a manipulation tactic. If you're a scientific person, you come in there and it's like, yeah, this isn't like any of this airy-fairy psychiatry stuff. Like, this is just, science. It's all science. It's all based off the science, right? If you come in there and you're like into astrology and you're into like crystals, they're going to be like, well, you're a Thetan, and we believe that Thetans are spirits, and as spirits that we don't have a supreme deity, because we together as Thetans formed the highest level of, godliness, and we together are the supreme deity, and we as Thetans together created the world and created everything. So whatever tickles your fancy, whatever flavor you're interested, whether you like sweet, whether you like salty, whether you like spicy, whether you like sour, they will present themselves to you however you want. But in reality, whichever one of those pathways you follow, it brings you back to the same thing. We think you're a good person with evil added. We think there are things that you may or may not know. And again, depending on who you are, depends on how they'll sell it to you. If you're an intelligent person, one of the things L. Ron Hubbard prided himself on about Scientology was that it increases people's IQ. I don't think that's a very difficult task. IQ tests are something you can study for. I'll tell you guys that. Newsflash, IQ test is something you can study for. Most people just sitting an IQ test out of nowhere, yeah, you're not going to do as well as if you do these types of practice tests and all these types of things. Even if you want to be a Mensa IQ, get your Mensa IQ test, which I did a Mensa IQ test myself recently because I was thinking about getting one of my students to do one of them. Which Mensa, they're like the elite IQ, like high society top. You have to be, I think it's the top 1 or the top 4%. It's probably the top 1 or 4% IQ. Even they have practice tests. They're like, practice these tests. These are the practice materials you can use before you sit an actual eye. So even that in of itself, it's just another lie. It's just another deception to reel you in. And then when you're in, it's like, you know what? There's really, the only thing that's wrong with you is your reactive mind. You're just good with evil added, right? Isn't that the music everybody wants to hear? Because it's the opposite of what people feel when they think about God. With God, people think, oh, I feel so ungodly and I feel like I'm going to hell because I feel like I'm a failure and I feel like this. It's the opposite of what you want to hear, isn't it? Complete opposite. But with Scientology, you're good. You're actually so close to being, you just need, little do you know that they're going to take you through this infinite process that's never going to end. And that's not me speculating. That is factual. That is factual from people who have survived. I've talked about this in the previous videos. So what is it really about then? And this is why I believe Scientology ultimately is just a tool for Satan to create his minions. Because what is Satan? He is prideful, he is selfish, and he is evil. It is not a boot camp. It is literal indoctrination camp for children of Satan. That's what it is. Because what is the law of Satanism? Do what thou wilt. Do whatever you want. Like I said, sounds amazing. When we're thinking about going to, when you're thinking about cooking yourself a steak, yeah, you want to have it rare, you want to have medium rare, you want to have it mooing, you want to have it well done, have it however you want. That's great, right? We should all be able to eat our steak the way we like our steak. Until we start to extrapolate that concept of do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. I'll give you guys an example of something that just flew into my head and I'm not really sure why, but we're going to run with it. I'm going to talk about when I worked at McDonald's. My first job at the age of 16 was at McDonald's. And I learned a lot because I was being paid, I think it was like £3.41 per hour. Can you imagine? Peanuts. Not even peanuts. Dirt, essentially. And it bewildered me because I would go at the end of my shift, in my till, there would be like over £1,000 in cash. Just my till, just in cash. Not even the card payments. And I'm being paid £3.41 per hour. Observably, I definitely should at least be earning more. I think we can all accept that most of these, types of jobs, people are being so severely underpaid. I didn't realize that even in America, which I learned last year, well, how weird is it to say that in a lot of places people are paid dirt cheap because the idea is, well, you're going to make money on tips. How do people get away with this stuff? Because they're just doing whatever they want. Do whatever you want. Because guess what? God gives us free will. And the thing that Satan wants to get us to do is to utilize that free will for evil. And that is why Satan has one law and God has a whole book of laws. Why? Because this is how you are in society. This is how society will function well, where the human life and soul will be valued. One thing I find interesting that's in the Bible that I think needs to be brought back into society, God's perfect order, is, it says in the Bible that you are to pay your people their day's wage. According to God, we shouldn't be getting paid a paycheck at the end of the month or this, that, and the other. You start a job and because you started after they already did the payroll, you're now going to be getting paid 2 months later, whatever that is. He says, pay the people the amount that they're paid that day. Because you know not why they need the money that day. God says, judges do not accept bribes for justice. Justice should... And so all of a sudden we see that just doing whatever you want maybe isn't for the best. Maybe that is problematic and evil. It is pride. It is pride. Because it is pride that leads to the entitlement. It is humility that would say, you know what? I value my staff members and I'm going to pay them well. I'm going to look after them. I'm going to make sure that they live well. And then you're big. And that's why it's actually foolishness anyway, because your company doesn't function well. All these companies that are like this, they're like a revolving door. That's why it's normal. Of course, that's where I worked at 16, because who the freak else is going to be working for? Well, in fairness, adults, because I was underage and you get paid. And this is just another thing I think is really stupid, by the way. I don't know if they still do this, but it's like you get paid one minimum wage if you're 16 and another minimum wage if you're 18 and another minimum wage if you're 21 and then another minimum wage if you're 25 plus. For the same job. You're doing the same work. I might be still the person standing next to me 10 years older than me is doing the same exact stuff I'm doing. In fact, when I was working at McDonald's, I only worked there for 3 months because then I got a job somewhere else, which I loved. By the way, I actually didn't mind working at McDonald's at all. I just didn't like the system. The people were great and the customers were lovely, actually. And I actually got Employee of the Month. But this is what I'm saying. Like, imagine me getting Employee of the Month. I'm being paid £3.41 per hour. Excuse me? And when the dude from HQ came down, he was like, I really like that girl. Me specifically was the person he really liked. Who cares? So what? I'm being paid £3.41 per hour. And I really could have done with the money at 16. I was saving to go to uni. I had to sell my own electric piano. It's one of the greatest regrets to this day. Saving money to go to university. Oh, why? Because they can. It's not about if it's fair. It's not about if I'm doing the right work. It's about that they can. And that's why we live in a society where you just can. And these people at the top making all this money. McDonald's is a business, guys. This is how crazy McDonald's is, yeah. This is what I think is why I think they're one of the most genius businesses out there. Did you know that McDonald's, they buy the land where their franchises are going to be? And then as somebody who wants to franchise, obviously you have to pay them to have a franchise. They're also your landlord. So McDonald's makes double the money for all of their franchises. Everywhere there's a McDonald's, they make money off of the people who decided to open that franchise, paying rent to lease or rent the land. McDonald's is one of the largest landowners, by the way. And also, it's the responsibility of the franchisee to obviously make the money, do whatever, and pay McDonald's. McDonald's is laughing. And then the people working there, are they making a good salary? No. Do you guys understand what I'm saying here? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying that free will and doing whatever you want isn't always the best. It isn't always in order. You see what I'm saying? There were parts of the Bible where, I can't remember where it was, where people they bring together all the resources everybody has and split it equally amongst everyone. It's not even about who has the most or being up there. It's about making sure everybody has what they have. Because that's what God is like. God is like, that's why somebody even pointed out this. My friend was saying this to me about how God, talked about how we have to put that as it's our responsibility to look after the widow and the orphan. Why is that? Because they're lacking in, obviously, husband or parents. What are they lacking in? Protection, provision, those types of things, right? That was God's order, that we don't just leave people to the wolves. So maybe there's other things to think about than just doing whatever we want. The 10 Commandments is another one. People, I had a very interesting conversation, guys, teaching the 10 Commandments to a bunch of 8 and then 10-year-olds. No, sorry, 7 and then 10-year-olds, because I was teaching religious studies. And so we did Islam, we did Judaism, we did Christianity, we did Hinduism, we did all these religions. One of the lessons, we were doing the 10 Commandments. And so I posed to these kids. I was like, what if the 10 Commandments are about relationships? Now, before anybody freaks out, this was at a school where the kids were specifically in this school because their parents wanted them to go to a school that talks about religious stuff. So everything was talked about. They were allowed to ask me what I believed. And I also explained to them about all the different beliefs. And I have to obviously explain to them about all the different beliefs. So it wasn't like, everybody follow God. It was like, this is what I believe, but this is what other people believe. This is why people don't believe what I believe. This is why people do believe in something else. Those types of things. Just want to make that clear. There was no indoctrination going on, okay? And the parents, everybody, all the boxes were ticked, okay? Because even when I teach now my own lessons, I never talk about my own opinions about stuff because it's not for the kids to know. I'm just there to teach them maths and science. Obviously, I'm teaching maths and science now. But anyway, and I said to them, what about if the 10 Commandments about relationships? What if it's about looking after people? And so then I told them, the task I gave them was to pick one of the 10 Commandments and talk about a time when they were affected by somebody not doing what one of them was. So like a time when they were affected by somebody stealing, or a time they were affected by somebody being killed and all this stuff. And my gosh, these kids had stories to the point where this lesson I had to wrap it up, but everybody just wanted to tell their story of something they'd been through. Like one kid, they accidentally left the dog in the car. No, they left their dog in the car and the dog was stolen and they were completely heartbroken. Somebody else, there was murder. One kid was like telling me, which I was just thinking, this is so sad because these like 7-year-olds, by the way. One kid was talking about how adultery had hurt them. I didn't even know how they knew what adultery was, by the way, but they dealt with this in their family and it was breaking up their family and they were going through so much. And I was just like, this is all about relationship. It's about how we treat each other. It's about God's perfect order. That he's not saying this to hold some kind of like, tyrannical reign over us. It's because he's like, he cares about people and he knows that it's not as simple and it's not good for us to just do whatever we want. It's prideful to just do whatever you want. It's prideful to see yourself as better than somebody else for whatever observable reason. That's why I always say in my YouTube channel that the Bible says we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, all of us. That's why I believe that Jesus came in the way he did, as a very humble sense, born in a manger. Why? Because if he'd come in looking like one of these big hot shot Pharisees and Sadducees and chief priests who killed him in the end anyway, they would have just been like, yeah, you see, he's one of us. Look at him, he's tall. They would have been like, he's this, he's one of us. And everybody would be feeling looked down upon. But Christ came humbly, and he's the only person who actually had a reason to be prideful, because he's the only one who never sinned. He's the only one who never did anybody wrong. What was everything he was doing? It was about relationship. It was about people. It was about love. It wasn't about some kind of selfish gain of what you want. And the thing is, guys, and I'll finish with this thought, this concept of just doing whatever you want is so deeply selfish, because the further you do that, the further you're going to find yourself in degenerate behavior. Very degenerate behavior, because it's going to be like a fix that there's nothing to keep you in check, right? Because I believe it's kind of like how I look at it like this, right? The Bible was like having a child in a playroom, right? You give your child a playroom, you pick the toys, you make it safe for them. But there are boundaries. There is a boundary to that playroom. They don't just get to run around outside and run in the road. Why is it? Because you know that for that child, they can do whatever they want to do here, but these boundaries are for their good. Why is it that we don't feed kids? We don't just give them, like when babies are born, we don't just open their little mouths and just pour sugar into their mouths, because we know what's good for them, what's actually going to help them to thrive. Because if we did do that, it's going to lead them into dysfunction. And even if you take God out of the picture, total selfishness and just doing whatever you want will always lead to your own dysfunction, because we live in a world where other people exist. So your actions affect everybody else. That's why I use the example of McDonald's just now, because it was one that I observed and I lived in. And I was like, these people who are doing what they're doing, yes, they can do it. They can do it. They can do it. But guess what also? They are affecting all of these different lives at the same time. And I use this example. I watched a show on Netflix recently because I've been off work, so I've been watching a lot of Netflix. I rarely really watch Netflix, but I've been watching a lot. I watched this show, and on the show they were showing this guy who basically made a deal with the devil, that if the devil was going to make sure that he and his family would be rich for the next 40 and 50 years, but it means that him and all the generations after him have to die. The generations end with him and his sister. They agreed to this thing, and 50 years later they're filthy rich, and then the angel of death comes and kills everybody, and it's very gory horror type of show. It's a crazy thing to watch. But there was another thing that happened as well. So first of all, the decision that he made obviously landed in all his kids, everybody being killed. Also, because of the means by which they got rich, there was complete dysfunction in the family. They were rich, but so much dysfunction. And then at the very end, before he died, because he was the last one to die, this angel, let's call it, shows him, this angel of death, let's call it, or devil even, shows him because what he had done is, the way he got famous and rich was because he basically claimed to have this medication that at any amount, whether it was in a small amount, could be used as a painkiller for just a normal headache, but in excessive amounts could be used for like serious pain and issues, and that it was not addictive and it had no symptoms. This is something that is always debated about in science. I learned a lot about this when I was doing my degree, that you have to think about the addictiveness of things and side effects. A lot of addicts, this is also why I don't judge people who are addicts to a lot of these hard drugs, because a lot of them became addicts because they had a serious injury, they went into hospital, they were put on to addictive substances, and they became addicted whilst being given this prescribed in hospital, and they were not able to overcome it. So this is a serious issue, and obviously side effects as well. Case in point being antidepressants. A lot of the antidepressants today are known to have the side effect of suicidal ideation. How the hell does that work? So these are important things to think about, right? He pushes this medicine. Obviously, this was a lie. People were dying and there was side effects. Sounds a lot like something that I know about, but we're not going to talk about that right now because we don't want our videos to be taken down. But anyway, read between the lines. So this angel of death eventually shows him, or devil I should say, shows him at the end of his life all of the souls of all of the people that died. All of the people that died because of his medication in his lifetime. So did he do what he want? Yes. Did him and his family get to live this life of luxury and whatever? Yes. But at the cost of what? At the cost of their sanity, at the cost of the functionality of the family, at the cost of so many different people's lives. And even just to get this, they had to kill people. They had to hide secrets. They had to do all this stuff. They had to fight so dirty. Because that's what ends up happening, because we live in a society, going back to my example in the very beginning. Somebody is shooting the duck and somebody is the duck that got shot. And that is what you guys, we need to understand, people need to understand about Scientology. That, if anything, to take away is what I want you guys to take away from this. So I hope this was interesting. I hope this was like a good explanation. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe if you're feeling the vibe and you want to join the tribe. And obviously check out my other videos. I've got lots of videos about lots of things. I have a whole playlist on Scientology as well, so you can check that out. I need to add some of the videos I haven't put in that playlist. But nevertheless, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts. I would love to know. If life's a game, let's play to win. God bless every single one of you guys. Just trying to help you win in life. That's what I'm trying to do. And I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.